Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start this session.
Yeah, you are.
Yes,
Want
it
to
is.
get
One.
going
You
once
should
I
be on
find the
radio.
clicker.
My voice is on.
You're on the air too.
Talk amongst yourselves for about 30
That's
seconds.
why
One
I'm
more.
quiet.
What?
Clicker.
Where's my clicker?
It's there.
Sorry, I don't mean to make a mess. Put this over here.
So I want to welcome everybody to the CEO Deep Dive. My name is Terry Brining. My organization is Brining Group, and I'm headquartered in California. My role here is to serve as facilitator. I'm very excited and honored to be facilitating this session. This session has become part of the ICA tradition of providing professional nourishment to senior level executives, so we hope to continue in that responsibility. One of the things that we want to talk about initially is why are we here? All of you were screened, as you know. You had to apply for this, and so it's only people that are in a senior level executive management position that are invited to attend. I don't think we'll physically throw anybody out if they're not, but it really is something that we need to make sure that we have the highest level of conversation. This is a private space, and by that what we mean that this is an opportunity for you to talk with others that are in the same position. Some of you have that opportunity all the time, many of you do not. So we want to make this a private, safe space for you to join in. Part of what you've agreed to, and if you forgot this, I'll remind you, is that you've agreed to fully participate. This is not a spectator sport. This is not a sit and listen sort of. You will do some sitting and listening, but there's an expectation that you will fully participate. So just a reminder of that, not only that that's what we're doing, but that's what you've agreed to in signing up for this. The responsibility for getting something out of this session is yours. We've got three amazing topics, four fabulous speakers. They're going to talk to you about their experience, provide some interesting ideas that we hope will be provocative for you. But if you leave here at the end of the day and you get nothing, I'm afraid that's on you. So we really do invite you to actively participate. You'll be given the opportunity to make some choices about where and how you want to participate, but this is really an opportunity for you to figure out what you need and then make sure that you get it. So here is an overview of the day. We're going to have three topics. They'll be introduced in just a moment. Each of our presenters will provide a snapshot of what they're going to be discussing. It's about 2 or 3 minutes, so it's not very much time. In the time that they're making their presentation, if you will, about what it is they're going to be talking about, you need to listen very carefully because then you have to decide. I heard somebody refer to this as a beauty contest. It's not that. It is very much about which of these ideas and elements fit best for where you are right now. Some of these things will be familiar to you, some of them will be absolutely not familiar, but the point is, your decision is to figure out which of these will best serve you and the organization that you're working with. So you decide which the best fit is. After you make that decision, we'll split the group up into three. One group will be meeting here, the others will be across the hall. So we'll tell you where you're supposed to be when, but you will work in your sessions until 4 o'clock. Just a warning, all of our speakers have promised that they're going to make you work through the break. So you will have a break, but it'll be a working break. So just to help manage expectations. Following the breakouts, we're going to be coming back here and we'll be receiving a report from each session. It's not the speakers that will be making those reports, it's one of you. And the idea is to do about a 7 or 10 minute synopsis of what you learned, what the value was, and that sort of thing. And what we want to do is be able to share all of that information with everybody else that's in the room, including those that weren't in your particular session. At the end, I'm going to ask each of you to identify one action that you're going to take. Now, you might come up with 13 actions that are compelling and interesting and that sort of thing, but I'm going to ask you to commit to one. The reason I do that is because if you commit to 13, you're going to probably get none of them done. But if you commit to one of them, there's a much better chance that you will do that. We're spending a lot of time here together. At ICA, there's a lot of information, a lot of connections. Your brain is going to be full, right? But what we want to do is make sure that there is some action when you go back to your real life, right, and your real job. So I'll be asking you to think about the one action that you want to take. So that's what we're going to do today. Sound okay? You're still in? Good. Okay, so here's the request for you. We are going to ask you to go with these speakers on a journey. You may not know, you shouldn't probably know where that journey is going to take you. You're going to have an idea of what it's going to look like, but we're going to ask you to commit to that. So make a decision. Now, what we don't want is to have you bouncing in between the different sessions. It's not useful to you and it's disruptive to others, and you'll miss out. Because this is not about getting a few snippets of interesting ideas. It's about doing a deep dive. In order to do that, you've got to fully commit. So we're going to ask you to make a decision. Now, if within the first 10 minutes you realize that this isn't what you thought it was going to be, or you were on the fence between a couple and you realize that you want to be in another, if within the first 10 minutes or so you change your mind, that's fine. After that, I would ask that you stick with the decision that you make in the session. We also ask that you stay for the duration. This is a 3-hour program, 3.5 hours with the break. So it's a long program. There will be other sessions after the break. The hope is that you're going to stay for the entire thing. You will gain greater benefit if you stay for the entire thing. So that's the request. And then again, a reminder, if I didn't mention this before, we ask you to actively participate. Okay? So that's what we've asked. With that, it is my great pleasure to introduce the first of our speakers. And this is Karen Stevenson, who you heard this morning in our morning wake-up call. Wasn't that a cool session? I thought that was great. So Karen was one of our presenters. Dr. Karen Stevenson is a global nomad. Like the Hollywood character Indiana Jones, she is a university professor who rarely shows up in the classroom. When she does appear, it is to impart her off-the-grid adventures about untangling complex global networks in financial fraud, pandemics, terrorism, and even matters as mundane as tribal politics, the kind we typically witness in market economies and global mergers. Karen studies these toxic human cocktails of trust and intrigue because they come gift-wrapped in tribal networks. There is a science to unraveling networks, and this new science informs leadership, governance, and global politics. With over 2 decades of teaching, kind of a difference, at UCLA and Harvard, where she earned her doctorate. She now lectures at Yale University and Erasmus University in the Netherlands. Please help me welcome Dr. Karen Stevenson.
Thanks. Thanks. Well, just a quick summary, 2 minutes. This morning we talked about the 3 rules of networks, and you know there's Coca-Cola and there's Coca-Cola Light or Diet Coke. Well, this morning was Coke Light. So in the session this afternoon, we're going to do a deeper dive into the 3 rules of networks, and they're going to be reframed. And what we're going to do is look totally at, out of my database, we're going to look totally at executive networks. Executive networks from corporations, from associations, from large global conglomerates, such as Doctors Without Borders, the United Nations, NIH, and we're going to be looking at executives and how their networks and how well they operate as a team with each other within the same tribe, as well as how well they collaborate across tribes. And the goal here is so that you can take a look at it from your perspective. There will be 2 exercises where you'll be asked to, learn enough from the information that you'll be able to look at some of this and do some analysis yourself. And then we'll end on a more humorous note, because even I have studied baboon networks. I'll just tell you a lesson I learned from the baboons. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And next up we have Philip Dramalka, who is a business expert with focus on innovation, technology, and business development. Philip's consultancy firm helps organizations expand and streamline their business through digital innovations and serves the major companies in Central Europe, including Deutsche Telekom, AXA, Hartmann, and so forth. He also invests in startups through digital ventures that he founded and provides mentoring for startup accelerators, Deutsche Telekom, Hubram, JIC, StarCube, Cosmos Startup, and so forth. Philip is a sought-after speaker and has been giving keynote lectures on major European digital and business conferences. Philip's going to talk to you, or give you an introduction of what he's going to talk about concerning driving digital innovations. Philip?
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Since we are innovators, so we will not follow the rules here. So in my session, you will not necessarily actively work, but if you want to, we'll work hard. I prepared for you some kind of MBA in digital innovations in 2 hours. So what we'll do is, when I say digital transformation, it's not a big thing. It's a series of small things starting from useful apps or services. So we will go through all interesting digital innovations that are recently available, and they will help you to streamline your processes or expand your business. We will talk about technology partnerships, which I think is the future of your business. And it's a new kind of partnership with a new kind of partners. I will talk about startup thinking. That means how to discover new ideas, how to bring them into life much faster, how to be much more flexible than you currently are. And also we will discover methods how to bring these innovations into life. So my sessions will be really specific. I hope you will leave with many notes, and it will be inspirational. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. For this third session, we're going to have 2 speakers, Deep Parekh, PhD, and Polo Lucer. They are both co-founders and managing partners at Asteroida AG, a boutique Swiss advisory and investment firm focusing on business strategy and transformation. Deep Parekh, PhD, is a serial entrepreneur, having co-founded 2 previous companies, and has served in an executive management role in global management consulting firms, serving clients such as Starbucks, Unilever, and Roche. On the academic front, Deep has a PhD from the Swiss Federal Institute of Management and Technology, at which he has also created a new think tank in the digital transformation space. Deep lives with his wife and his 6-year-old daughter in Lausanne, Switzerland. Joining Deep will be Polo Lucer, who has worked as an executive with international P&L responsibility in high-growth global companies for over 20 years. His industry background is in the healthcare and in the meetings industry, with focus on strategy execution. He earned his executive MBA in business transformation at the University of St. Gallen and Santa Clara in the Silicon Valley, and also earned his CMM certification. Polo and his family live near Zurich, Switzerland. Deep and Polo.
Thank you. So, how many of us think we're living in a world where it's just business as usual? Okay, perfect. I hope you're making money. I think for the rest of us, we can pretty much agree that the world is changing. As Philip pointed out, it's not one big event as a revolution, but many small things happening. But in order to recognize those small things happening, you have to have some view of where that future is. We see the situation characterized in a couple of different ways. One is the transparency of information. The other is shifting global networks. And the last is the embeddedness of technology in pretty much every interaction that we have. So with this as the backdrop, there's some complications for this industry.
What does it mean for the meetings industry? Well, I want to share an example. I was more than 10 years with a company called Kuoni. Who still remembers that company? I see many arms going up. Did you know Kuoni was worth more than 2 billion 10 years ago? Was kind of vanished from the marketplace except for the new business model innovation where they do visa services. So I stepped out of Kuoni more than 20 years ago. I stepped out of your industry 2 years ago, and I do see some similarities happening now in this industry, and that's what we want to tackle at. We do see that networks become kind of less important for new market entrants. We do see that information asymmetry vanishes as a competitive advantage, and that's very important to see how these competitive advantages will urge many of us in the meetings industry to go to a new way how we do business. And I'm Polo. I'm looking forward to some of you to do this afternoon together with my business partner Deep.
So Polo's got a lot of experience in your industry, plus experience as an executive. I come to you with 20 years of management consulting and advisory services work with Booz Allen, Ernst & Young, and a variety of other players. And what we're doing in our session is basically three things. Number one, we're going to help you visualize your strategy and your business model in a different way than you might have in the past, in a way that's more articulate, in a way that's more complete and holistic. The second point is that we're going to help you to map your value exchange network. So really understand what is the value that is shifting between partners, who are the partners in your business ecosystem, and how does that change? And the last point is that using this information, again, all specific to your firm, we're going to help you devise an outline of a transformation roadmap and what that might look like for you in terms of what are the jobs to be done in the next few years, the big undertakings that you'll have to organize around. So these are the three things that you're going to gain from this workshop with worksheets that you will actually take home to your business and be able to repeat back to your senior leadership team or other management teams that will help you in this change. Okay? Thanks for listening.
Thank you all. So now it's time to make a choice. For those of you that came in after the initial overview of the session, we're going to ask you to make a choice of where you want to spend the next few hours. This is a deep dive, so it's not a taste of any of these ideas. It really is a deep dive, with the idea being that you will walk out of here with some specific actions that you will take that help you become a more effective executive. So the power of networks with Karen Stevenson will remain in this room. Driving digital innovations with Philip will be in meeting room 2 and 3 across the hall. And then business modeling with Polo and Deep will be in meeting rooms 4 and 5, also across the hall. You will meet there until 4 o'clock, at which time you'll come back into this room and we'll find out what happened, okay? So can I just get a show of hands, just so I know, because you need to make a decision. How many are going to stay and hear the power of networks? Thank you. How many are going to go with Philip to driving digital innovations? Good, thank you. And business modeling with Polo and Deep? Okay, good. So we're split up very nicely. Good. Okay, terrific. So have a great session. We'll see you all in a few hours. Thank you. Get some reports on what you've done. We're hoping that your presentations don't look like this. You've all sat through these presentations, yes? But what we want to do is just get sort of a snapshot of what you learned, the insights, and that sort of thing that you got from the session that you sat in on. So first of all, we'll talk about the power of networks. So we're going to ask you to use the microphone also.
Thank you. All right, I will try to summarize what we've learned in this session about networks in 5 minutes. So for those of you who don't remember, our session was around networks. It was Dr. Karen Stevenson who taught us a lot of things about how to work with networks, and really started out by saying it's not about what we know. It's not even who we know. It's how we actually work with that, how we are connected. It's how the who are connected in a network. So what I'm going to run through real shortly is that there are basically 3 rules that we learned during this session about networks, 3 laws of networks. And the first one is that networks of influence coexist with hierarchical authority. And that means that at the one side, we might have a very nice structured company corporate hierarchy that we all understand is very beautiful looking. But on the other side of that, we have a social network that might look completely different from that. And one of the good things in our session was that we really had some real life cases, some examples from real organizations, real companies who had done this form of analysis. And one of these analyses we saw, the first one was a hierarchy where the CEO wasn't really that well connected with anyone when it came to the duality of this. And actually also some of the CEO's connections weren't that very well connected within the organization. And that just means that the hierarchical structure is completely different from the social capital or the network. We also had a fantastic case from Karen during this part where she talked to us about talking to a group of primatologists, people who were basically, I think they were studying baboons, right? And these primatologists, so the whole session was about talking to them about what they really thought they didn't know about networks. And after that whole session, one of them came up and said, well, great presentation, but nobody's really going to believe you because you're not one of us. And that really kind of underpinned that, well, it was all wasted and all the knowledge about networks apparently was wasted on these people. Then we got into the second rule, and that was synchronicity, that there are actually multiple networks that interact. And we got through this whole ladder of networks that we need to be aware of. There is a decision-making network, where it's all about decision-making. There's a work network, how do we share the work? There's a social network, who do we like to golf with or hang out with? There is an innovation network, who are the innovators and how do they work together? An expertise network and an improvement network. And also strategy and career. So there's this whole ladder. So there are actually multiple networks that you need to be wary of. And then we all had to do work. So what we were presented with was an organization. We all had it nicely set up like a clock from 1 to 12. And we were informed who is the CEO, who is the chief operating officer, who are the males, who are the females. And then we had to look at 4 different networks. And then we had to make observations in groups, and we had to make recommendations. And that was really, really an interesting exercise for us, because it really got to show us some of these rules, how they came into play. We really got to see how the CEO was connected to only 3 or 4 people, and he was not at all connected to the chief operating officer. And once again, this was a real case. And after we all in the groups did this hard work on looking at this network, and we gave recommendations, some said we need to fire the chief operating officer, some said the CEO is completely unnecessary in this organization. All of these observations were really interesting, and we got to see how these networks came into play, and were told the story afterwards, so we were given the results. And I'm not going to share that here, because that's for the group only.
All right.
And then,
Tease.
and then the last lesson we learned was centrality, how networks have structure based on certain keynotes. So we were basically taught that there are 3 kinds of people, and we also did a little test, a very short test, to see what sort of people we were. So there are the hubs. They're the ones who are connected to everyone. They know everything what is going on in the organization. They just simply know every little secret. And that's one thing about the hubs. They're very outgoing, they're fun, you go party with them, don't tell them a secret. And just for your information, I'm a hub, so don't tell me a secret. They're the gatekeepers. They are the very strategic people who sit at a certain point in a network, and they have all the information. And they're connecting one side of your organization with another side, and they are simply just, without them, it all breaks down. So they're really important individuals. They're in control in many ways. And then there are the pulse takers. The pulse takers you're not necessarily always aware of. They are very key certain nodes in a network diagram that kind of connects a very certain strategic resource with another one, and kind of sit at a very, very important place. They're not easy to find when you look at a network diagram, because you have to have a basic understanding of the importance of each of those nodes. But they are connected to a great number of people, but very often indirectly. So they are the friend of a friend, or the foe of a foe, or something like that. And I think that was my, perhaps, a little more than 3-4 minutes summation of this group. Thank you.
Nice. No pressure for the next presenters at all. That's great. Thank you, Jonas. So now we're going to have somebody talk about what you learned in the Driving Digital Innovation session. Please. In the back? Yeah.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
No pressure indeed.
No
Thank you
pressure.
so much. Definitely, Mr. Philip gave us a very great introduction onto digital and innovation transportation within the business events industry itself. It was really informative. So basically, I will summarize this really quickly. So basically, it's talking about using the latest, not technology necessarily, but latest innovations, ideas, and digital, let's say, apps. We talked about apps, what kind of apps that we use in our business events industry, which came up to very little that we are using. And then he introduced a lot of new, let's say, innovative apps that we could use, which we could benefit a lot in our industry. Believe it or not, maybe an apps that it's really, I mean, we could all have it, we could all download it in, in seconds, but we have never even looked at it. In certain cases, for example, the Convention Bureau, Abu Dhabi Convention Bureau, we don't have bigger of a team. We are around 7 members in the Convention Bureau. So these new innovations, innovation apps could help us a lot in outsourcing our certain, let's say, skills and tools we are talking about. An interesting thing that we talked about is the innovation map, basically, which you sit with your team and you highlight what are the main themes of your industry. So we talked about delegates, we talked about ambassador program, our ambassadors, we talked about the destination marketing, so on and so forth. And each of these elements will have certain innovations within. So we could use and utilize these small apps or innovations in order to make our job easier, more effective, and let's say fast expanding. So basically, in general, if I would summarize this, it was just to how to digitize and how to transform your let's say, skills and tools into the digital and innovation teams. I don't know if I missed anything from my team. If you would like to me add something, it was last minute for me here. But yes, that's in summary, this is what we have discussed. Thank you.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you so much. And then we're going to get a report on the business modeling session. So we have 2 people presenting. Who is the other?
Hans?
Hans?
I don't think we're coordinated, so I think maybe one of us can go first and the other one can, because I don't think we orchestrated this as a coordinated effort. But anyway, I want to first of all say I really enjoyed the session. As CEOs, I don't think we take enough time to think about our most important job, which is to say, how is our business going to sustain 10 years from now? We're also focused on delivering our results every day, every year, every quarter. And we probably don't put enough effort into that. And I think that this session was really nice from a CEO standpoint to take some time out and really rethink. And Deep and Paulo did a fantastic job. I think in terms of challenging us, they presented, they sort of have a very nice workshop style, which has a lot of provocative examples, has a well-organized worksheet, so you can go through step by step. And finally, I think really enjoyed the facilitated dialogue that we had and the input from all of the attendees. So, so first and foremost for us, it was a lot about, we all agreed at the outset that everything is changing, a lot of business models are changing, so we have to rethink. And that sort of was the basis of the conversation, is to say, with all of these business models changing out there, how do we think our business model is going to change? And that was the main thing that we started thinking about and looking at that through all of the different examples and things like that. So it's sort of a 5-step process that we went through. Certainly, my mind was racing in all of the different possibilities, and I'm going to say some things about our business, and I know there are a lot of customers in the room. Doesn't mean I'm going to do any of those things, just saying. But there were a lot of things running through my head that we could be doing, which might be disruptive and might be different in the long term. So the 5-step process that we really went through, first was to map the business strategy. And I think probably the most important thing is to kind of gauge your current state and really map it through your purpose, mission, what you're trying to accomplish, who your products are, what your market is. And it sounds simple, I think, when you get to it, but all of our business are actually quite complex. They're not very straightforward, and when you start writing and jotting these things down, you realize how much complexity there really is. So we did that. The second piece was to map the business model. I thought that was really interesting. You map it sort of in 3 axes: the financial modeling, the operating model mapping, as well as the partner model. A lot of our businesses are increasingly dependent on partners, so I was glad to see that component being there as we went through the whole mapping exercise. And again, the point of all of these sheets really is you map the current state and how you think things are running today. And then, of course, when you come back with all the disruptive ideas, you go through and remap it again. The third one was to map the value exchange. And again, I'm a software provider. We provide software to the industry and a lot of your customers. And at first, when I started looking at it, I'm like, I don't really have much of a value chain. It's us and our customers. And of course, as I started thinking through how we use Microsoft, how we use the Amazon cloud throughout the world, how we use some other partners, it actually started taking some really, really nice shape. Then we got into defining the gaps and opportunities, which is really, you kind of get to that after you come up with where you think you're going to be disruptive. Where do you think your business model is going to go? And once you figure out where your business model is going to go, now you start thinking, okay, so what are the gaps and opportunities? And so we sort of mapped those across these axes and said, if this is what we were doing and if this is where the business model is going, what are the things that need to evolve and what are the gaps and opportunities? And finally, of course, it all boils down to priorities, and it all boils down to really thinking, what are the things that you can do that are incremental? What are the things you really must do that are structural? And sort of trying to look at all of that into a 4-quadrant type of a map and say, these are some of the incremental opportunities we have. These are some really big structural things, but boy, if you could do this, maybe that's a big, big, big shift for us. Certainly, in the end, I was sort of thinking, and I even asked them the question, what if we are wrong? You know, this is, and we really had a good, I thought, dialogue around this, because we're challenging ourselves, and we're thinking about some really crazy things in some ways, maybe really good things, but the thought as a CEO to say, yes, I'm going to think about these things. Yes, I'm going to look at a lot of the ideas. Yes, I'm going to probably try some of these, and maybe some of these I'll fail at, but I will quickly recover and try some of these again. You know, is really, I thought, what we got out of it. Our business is relatively simple, which is we provide software to a lot of you. And when I think about it that way, I'm thinking, okay, let's say we have 1,000 venue customers, but then I started thinking, wait a minute. In each of these 1,000 venue customers we probably have 30 people in each of these venues that are using our software, and we spend so much time in training them and doing all of these things, and ultimately, you know, they're doing bookkeeping and order management. Could there be something in the future where, you know, they do the selling part, but as far as all the bookkeeping and all of that, orders, invoices, and all of that, could that be outsourced? And over time, could we make that much more smarter through artificial intelligence and other things, so that venues really don't have to worry about all of that stuff, which I've seen a lot of our venue customers generally, you know, when they get very trained and when they have great staff, it works really well. Otherwise, I mean, it's a lot of effort. So I was really thinking around those lines as potential opportunities for us. And the other thing I was really thinking about is there are a lot of small venues out there that don't have good software and a lot of times can't afford good software. And so would there be opportunities where we could use some of the modern technologies? And maybe our revenue model might be different. It might be based on sharing and other things, but it may not be based on them necessarily paying for our software. So there are a lot of good ideas that came out of it. And I really appreciate the time you guys took, and really appreciate ECOG giving us this opportunity to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got nothing to add. It's just fantastic. Thank you.
I think you should cover your case study. Might give us a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, well, Pool and Deep really made us work hard. It was fantastic because we are, with my company, Safe Hotels Alliance, we are at the stage where we actually reviewing our business model. And so this was so good. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everybody who were in the room. It was fantastic, I must say. I picked up two things that you mentioned in there, which I thought was really important. Success is the biggest enemy to change, because you are getting satisfied if you are successful. In today's world, you need to change constantly, and you need to add value, and you need to realize what do you actually sell. We say that we sell certifications to hotels and meeting venues, but we don't. We sell actually a communication tool between tour operators, travel managers, and hotels and meeting venues. That's what we do. And the second thing is actually that there is nothing as a sustainable competitive advantage. You have to constantly, again, improve and see. You have to analyze what your clients and what your customers want. Who are they and how do they develop? So, I mean, 10 years from now, we might not even have hotels. It might just only be B&Bs or you know, R&Bs. So we have to see what can we offer 5 years from now. And that we need to think of now, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the help in translating what you learned. Appreciate that very, very much. So now what I wanted to do is give some opportunity for our speakers to, as they've listened to your reports, to comment on any common themes, ideas, what the crossover is, because they were very, very different topics. So what did you hear from the other reports that you thought would be relevant? Deep?
I think one of the first things is that when our friend here was talking about the session with Karen, that when we're talking about business transformation, it's very critical to look at who is actually transforming that business and how do you leverage the people within the network of the business to do the transformation. And there are different roles and very specific roles for the hubs, for the gatekeepers, and for the, what was the last one?
Pulse takers. Yeah.
So there's
funny name.
different roles for each of these, and there's different roles of each of these types of networks throughout the phase of a transformation.
Correct.
And so I think those two need to be married, and they're very, very complementary.
Wonderful. Thank you. Other observations, comments?
Yeah, I have two comments. One is that it was a great note that success is the biggest enemy of change and the whole innovation, because so many companies wait until there is a problem, economy drop down and so on, and then they start to change. So I think that works. And the second one is that there is a great startup and tool for measuring how the network is working called Purposefly. And so many organizations that started to implement that see exactly how the network works. So there are tools for everything.
There are.
Good, thank you. Karen, any?
Well, I mean, I think that there are tools, and this is where technology can be very helpful in helping guide innovation. But I think the higher issues are, what is the nature of the business? Why are we changing? Where are we going with it? And to be able to leverage the internal people for achieving that goal is really important. I remember, who was the Hammer or somebody said to me, gosh, Dr. Karen, if I'd only known who the gatekeeper was, I think I could have fixed that one thing. So, you know, I think part of it is you can have all the wisdom that you can have as a CEO, but if you don't leverage your people appropriately, they'll block you at every way.
Maybe it's a very good comment. One of the ideas, there was a question, what if the new business model won't work?
Yeah.
So that's why I think, you know, the organizations need to adopt the startup thinking, because the startups usually they change the business models every 3 to 6 months. So nowadays you have ways how to test the idea if it will work or not much faster than before. So
I agree.
Using startup thinking also answers the question or addresses the challenge of success is the enemy of change, right? Yeah.
Isn't it fascinating that the comments in our, let's say, session came from innovative businesses like Hans or Manish, who already think about the next step, while for some of us who have been 10, 20 years in the business, it's much more difficult to make that step. But for them, this agile thinking, agile IT, agile development is just a normal, it's in their DNA. And I think we can learn a lot by mixing the people in a group. That's where I took a lot of advantage. I found it very valuable to have this mix today and to learn from the different challenges. While a conference center has assets and is maybe not so easy to strip all your assets and go in a total different mode, while somebody who is already stripped of all assets, let's put it that way, has it much easier to go there. So I found it very enriching to have these different, let's say, energies in the room, and I fully agree with you too. This is really what we must embrace in order to get to the future business model and then use the network and use innovation in order to get there.
Just one further comment on this, that since we talked about the technology embeddedness in everything that we do, and it's interesting to hear here that about how technology, we use the two words of soup and salad, right? That when you have technology as a salad element, if you don't like it, you shove it to the side, you don't eat it or whatever, right? But it's not integrated into your business. And companies that have adopted the salad approach have not lasted very long, right? But the companies which have fully embraced technology and used technology as the basis for the changes have inevitably been more successful. And so that's the soup approach, where technology changes the fundamental flavor of your business, and it's a core element that you can't just extract and leave on the side like that. So.
Any final questions from all of you for our speakers? Okay. The final question, then, is this. What one action will you take to be a better executive? As I said at the beginning, if we've just spent the last 3 hours, almost 3.5 hours together, and you walk away with nothing, that's a very bad use of your time. And if you have 27 things that you're going to promise to do, chances are good you'll do none of them. So what I'd like you to do is think about one thing you'll do. And by the way, you're not limited to one. If you want to do 3, that's okay. But I'd like you to commit to one thing, one action that you'll take. And I'd like it to be an action rather than I'm going to think about doing something, because that's a thought, which may or may not result in action. So take a moment and write down, whether it's in your device or on a piece of paper. Unless you have a photographic memory, then you can just think of it. But write down the one thing that you'll do. I'll give you a minute to do that.
The super salad was a very good example in this example. It's become part of our jargon. Yeah. They have this tool.
Oh, yeah.
They have this friendly.
Oh, it's everywhere. There's like 50 tools out
the
there.
audience.
Oh, yeah.
They should the audience from our conversation. To
Yeah.
find if the audience has the final word.
Yeah, I know the tool, but there's so many out there. There's about 50 of them. It's really about the measurement that they use. It's key. But yeah, that's an excellent one.
And have this beautiful visualization, how it changes over time.
What I'd now ask you to do is
That's the way to do it,
share
yeah.
that one thing you're going to do with 1 or 2 people sitting near you. Just say it out loud very quickly. It should be very, very quick. If you haven't come up with anything, use their idea.
I was studying this 35 years ago before they even had software on this. It's been great to see all the development now. Back when dinosaurs roamed free.
That was easier, right? No, but it's like, of course, it helps with a lot of things. But let's say that the foundation is still surrounded.
Yeah. I think a key is how you're using it, for what purpose. You can use it to engineer and change. You can use it as a regular checkup, which I've encouraged to establish, make standards, use it as a checkup once a year, once every year and a half.
Yeah, it's good. People now,
Of course, maybe the wrong answer, because we know intuitively what is the right answer.
Exactly.
so they don't
Give them
trust too
direction.
much, and
And
it's
I
like
think we
more-
should
We're almost
make this
forgetting
maybe
it,
part
yeah.
of such
so
another
that's why I
conference
think
where
it's
you have
as you say, like check up once.
3, 4
And they also think, you know, that the way to go on this stuff is
Normally
big
they
data.
pay
You don't need
10,000,
big
they
data,
can
you
do
can do it through
5K.
simple surveys. You can use big data, but it's unnecessary number crunching.
You don't even have a deal on the table, and you already want to discount it.
No, you're right. I just want to say the same.
Like almost nobody actually.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to share yours? Has anybody not shared yours?
Don't poison the big soup
Yeah.
by the wrong ingredient. Make it
Okay, we're
separate
back.
soup, so you can't fail.
Let's come back. We're almost done.
Two soups.
Yes.
I will
So the
that
final
comparison
task
with
for
the soup
you-
and salad, it's a good one.
The final task is to, did you all see these? Do you all know what this is? These are your ROI gold coins. I know, they're worth so much money. What I would ask you to do, this is an opportunity for ICA to determine the value that you get. Again, all of you are here at no small expense of time and money. We want to make sure this is a good use of your time and money. So what I'd ask you to do is write on your gold coin, which there should be some in the middle of each table, the value that you got from the last 3 hours that you've been in this session. What was the greatest value that you're going to be able to use to put in your work? Okay? It could relate to the one action you're going to take, or it could be something different. It could be a connection you made, but what is the greatest value? And after you do this, as you're leaving the room, there's a tree, and we'd ask that you hang your ROI coin on the tree. These will all be collected, and this is going to give us a good indication of the value that you derive, and probably have a greater return than a questionnaire than you're going to send.
Sounds familiar.
So
this
fill
tree.
out your gold coin, please.
I've created 3 softwares, one on the SAS platform. That's how come I was asked by IBM to do all this research. That's how I know a lot of the programmers and a lot of the companies. So
You don't have to, by the way. You can still leave if you don't do your gold coin.
That's what's missing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But boy, is
As the
software
volume
sexy,
increases, that tells
so
me that you're
beautiful.
talking about cat night instead of being here. So what I'd like to do,
Because it's part of our business to discover.
my final action is to thank our speakers. I'd like to thank Karen Stevenson, Philip Dramalka, Polo Lucer, and Deep Parekh for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Useful, not useful.